Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive into one of the most iconic decades for fashion, the 1960s. We're going to explore, how this era was about so much more than just clothes.
Yeah.
Get ready to find out how fashion became a powerful tool for self-expression and even revolution.
Yeah.
All based on this Medium article, Fashion Trends, 1960s Greatest Hits.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, the 60s really were a turning point for fashion.
Yeah.
And how people used clothes to make a statement.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about, looking good.
Right.
It was about expressing yourself and your beliefs.
Yeah, and the article even mentions, people were making history through their clothes.
Right.
What specific examples come to mind when you hear that?
Well, I think one of the most obvious examples is the whole Jackie O effect.
Yeah.
Jackie Kennedy's style was just so influential,
Yeah, absolutely.
Blending that sophistication with, a touch of approachability.
Right.
Pillbox hats, A-line dresses.
And those sunglasses.
And, of course, those iconic oversized sunglasses.
I've always loved those sunglasses. I remember as a kid trying to channel my inner Jackie O by pairing them with, anything I could find in my mom's closet.
Yeah.
Do you think her influence came from mixing high-end pieces with more affordable ones?
I think that was definitely part of it.
Yeah.
Jackie O was known for wearing both designer pieces and things from more accessible brands.
Right.
But I think it was also her attitude,
Yeah.
her elegance, her confidence, and that ability to make even simple outfits look incredibly chic.
Yeah.
She really elevated everyday style.
And then we have the British invasion taking the world by storm.
Yeah.
And with it came the mod look.
Yeah.
A style that was all about youthful energy and a sharp modern aesthetic.
Yeah, the Mod Squad brought a whole new energy to fashion.
Yeah.
Those geometric patterns of the color block dresses.
Right.
And we can't forget the miniskirt popularized by Mary Quant.
Yeah.
It was a real symbol of rebellion.
He was a bold
Statement that really challenged the norms of the previous generation.
I bet those shorter hemlines caused quite a stir back then.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
It wasn't just about fashion.
Right.
It was a statement about changing social values and the emerging power of youth culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That shift from those full flowing skirts to the straight short shifts.
Yeah.
It was a visual representation of a generation breaking away from tradition.
Yeah.
It was a way for young people to express their independence and their desire for something new.
And then on the West Coast, a completely different vibe was taking shape with the hippie movement.
Right.
A counterculture that embraced peace, love, and of course tie-dye.
It was such a departure from the more structured, tailored looks of the past.
Yeah.
The hippies really embraced those flowing silhouettes, natural fabrics, and vibrant colors.
Yeah.
Bell-bottoms, fringe vests, those beautiful flower crowns, maxi dresses, peasant blouses.
Right.
And, of course, the peace sign necklace.
Do you remember your first encounter with the hippie style?
Oh, yeah.
Were you drawn to its free-spirited energy, or were you more of an observer?
I was a little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
It was hard not to be captivated by that energy.
Yeah.
It's so different from anything that had come before.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was more about observing and appreciating the creativity and the sense of community.
It's fascinating how fashion can reflect such diverse values and ideologies within the same decade.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, while those trends were unfolding, another major force was shaping fashion.
What's that?
The space race.
Oh, that's right.
It was a time of, incredible technological advancements.
Yeah.
And that sense of wonder and futurism found its way onto the runways.
Oh, yeah. Designers like André Courreges and Pierre Cardin were creating these space-age looks.
Right.
With white go-go boots and silver mini dresses.
Exactly.
It must have felt like walking on the moon.
Yeah.
It's incredible how something as monumental as space exploration could influence what people wore.
I think it really captured the spirit of the times.
Yeah.
That optimism, the sense of limitless possibilities.
Yeah.
People were fascinated by the idea of space travel.
Right.
And fashion became a way to express that fascination.
And speaking of shaping trends, while we've been focusing on women's fashion, the 1960s also witnessed a significant shift in men's style.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a time when men started to break free from the traditional constraints of the gray flannel suit.
Right.
And embrace a more colorful and expressive look.
It was a real move away from that conformity.
Yeah.
Toward a more individualistic approach to style.
Yeah.
Men started incorporating bolder pieces into their wardrobes.
Like what?
Narrow jackets, turtlenecks, paisley shirts.
And those wide ties.
And those wide ties.
And super wide lapels.
And those super wide lapels.
I've noticed some of those trends making a comeback recently.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that fashion really is cyclical.
It really is.
Interesting is how that loosening of dress codes reflected the changing social norms of the time and the growing influence of youth culture.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The 1960s were a time of such social and cultural upheaval.
Yeah.
And those changes were reflected in like every aspect of life,
Yeah.
including the way people dressed.
It sounds like accessories played a huge role in defining the 60s aesthetic as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The right accessories could like make or break an outfit,
Right.
adding that extra touch of personality and flair.
From chunky plastic jewelry to tall boots and those ever-present oversized sunglasses.
Right.
And who could forget the headbands, the hair rollers, that quest for the perfect bouffant,
Yeah.
and those Twiggy-inspired false eyelashes.
It's amazing how those seemingly small details could like completely transform a look.
Right.
And even become symbols of a particular style tribe.
Yeah.
Accessories were a way to express your allegiance to a certain group or subculture.
Yeah.
Whether you were a mod, rocker, or a hippie.
Right.
Your accessories really helped you communicate your identity to the world.
I'm curious, what were some of your favorite accessories from the 1960s?
Oh, that's a tough one.
What pieces really captured the essence of the era for you?
Oh, wow.
What pieces really captured the essence of the era for you?
Oh, gosh. There's so many to choose from, but I think I'd have to say the oversized sunglasses.
Yeah.
They just have that cool, effortless vibe that really captures the spirit of the 60s.
They do.
And they're so versatile. You know,
Yeah.
you can dress them up or down.
Right.
And they always make a statement.
It's fascinating how a single decade could give rise to so many iconic and diverse trends.
Right?
Each one kind of telling a story about like the social and cultural shifts that were happening at the time.
Yeah.
The article calls the 60s a time when people weren't just wearing clothes, but they were making history.
Yeah.
What events or movements do you think contributed to this idea?
Well, I think you can't really talk about the 60s without acknowledging the civil rights movement.
Right.
You know, it's a time of such immense change and upheaval
Yeah.
as African Americans fought for equality and justice. And fashion really played an interesting role in this movement.
I'm curious to learn more about that. How did fashion intersect with the fight for civil rights?
Well, for many African Americans, it was about like reclaiming their heritage
Yeah.
and challenging the, racist beauty standards that had been imposed upon them.
Right.
They started embracing like traditional African clothing and hairstyles
Yeah.
as a way to express their pride and identity.
That makes a lot of sense. It wasn't just about aesthetics.
Yeah.
It was about using fashion as a tool for empowerment and self-determination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you also have the rise of feminism,
Right.
which also had a profound impact on fashion.
Yeah.
Women were fighting for equal rights.
Yeah.
And their clothing choices really reflected this shift in attitude.
The miniskirt comes to mind again?
Right.
Was it seen as a symbol of liberation, or was it like more complex than that?
It's definitely complex.
Yeah.
I mean, the miniskirt was incredibly controversial at the time.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it was seen as a symbol of female empowerment, allowing women to express their sexuality and break free from like those traditional notions of femininity.
Right.
But it also sparked debates about objectification and whether women were truly in control of, their bodies and their image.
It's interesting how a single garment could hold so much meaning
Yeah.
and generate such like diverse reactions.
Yeah.
It really highlights how fashion can be a reflection of like broader social and cultural debates.
It really can.
Yeah.
The 60s were a time of such intense change and experimentation.
Yeah.
People were questioning everything, pushing boundaries, and demanding to be heard.
Yeah.
And fashion became like this powerful platform for expressing those sentiments.
Right.
It allowed people to challenge the status quo, to declare their independence, and to fight for the world they wanted to see.
It's amazing how the echoes of that decade are still so present in fashion today. Those bold colors, geometric patterns, and even a touch of vintage flair. They all seem to carry a whisper of that like rebellious 60s spirit.
You're absolutely right. Trends may come and go, but the legacy of the 60s lives on.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that fashion is more than just clothes.
Right.
It's a powerful form of self-expression, a way to connect with history, and a testament to the enduring human desire for individuality and change.
Speaking of connections, as we delve deeper into this era, I'm curious to know what aspect of 60s fashion resonates most with you. Was it the elegance of Jackie O, or perhaps the rebellious spirit of the Mod Squad, or maybe the free-flowing vibes of the hippies, or even that futuristic space-age look?
Oh, it's tough to choose just one.
Yeah.
Each style tribe had such a unique energy and aesthetic.
Right.
It's incredible how they all coexisted within like the same decade.
It really speaks to like the dynamism and the spirit of experimentation that defined the 60s.
Yeah.
As we wrap up our deep dive, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on how this era continues to influence style today. Do you see any echoes of the 60s in the way people dress now?
You know, it's fascinating to consider how the legacy of that decade continues to shape our perceptions of fashion.
Yeah.
What was once considered like radical or rebellious has now become part of the mainstream.
Right.
We see elements of 60s style, like everywhere, from the resurgence of vintage clothing to the reinterpretation of those iconic silhouettes and patterns, on modern runways.
It's almost like a conversation across time.
Yeah.
Designers are drawing inspiration from the past and reinterpreting it for a new generation.
Exactly. And it's not just about like the specific trends or garments.
Right.
It's also about the attitude.
Yeah.
The 60s were all about breaking rules, expressing individuality, and challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
And that spirit of self-expression is still so relevant today.
That's what makes exploring this era so captivating.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about following trends. It was about using fashion as a form of like personal and even political expression, a way to communicate who you are and what you believe in.
Absolutely. The 60s taught us that fashion can be a powerful tool for change.
Yeah.
A way to challenge norms and to create a world that reflects our values. And that's a lesson that continues to resonate today.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey back to the fabulous 60s.
Always my pleasure.
It's been a blast exploring the iconic trends, the cultural influences, and the lasting legacy of this revolutionary decade in fashion.
It really was a remarkable era.
It was, and to all our listeners out there, keep rocking your own unique style.
Yeah.
And never be afraid to use fashion to express yourselves.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay stylish.